Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We are right now in a precarious position as it relates to solar activity because there is a huge amount of sunspots rotating soon to Earth's center and direct right here. We can see all these sunspots there on the eastern limb of the sun. This is solar coordinate system. And in fact, there are a lot of sunspots following up right behind the sunspots that we are seeing, specifically right here. This is about to rotate into view. This is the 270-degree line, that eastern limb. This 180 is exactly opposite the Earth, meaning it'll take about 2 weeks to go from here to Earth facing and direct. And so the next 7 to 10 days are really looking quite dynamic. And this leads us all the way up to a really big conjunction between Venus and Jupiter. Venus right now is charging ahead of the sun. Jupiter has been our evening star effectively for quite some time now. Really bright, high up in the sky. Now it's getting closer and closer to the ground as the sun sets. Venus being the brightest star in the sky. The two of them are going to have a conjunction in the constellation of Gemini on the 9th of June. So as this planetary energy is building, and typically this is seen as a good energy, a benefic energy, we are going to be having these sunspots moving through Earth center and direct, and there is quite a lot of flux with these sunspots, but there hasn't been that many big explosions and solar flares yet. So the potential is there, but it hasn't happened. The next 2 weeks though look very dynamic, and I think we are going to be seeing an uptick in activity. We've been seeing some actually over the past few days, but all far side. So if you look at the very beginning of this video, wait till it resets, you'll see this big shock wave right there. See that? That was from just beyond the limb from some of these sunspot groups that have been mentioned. There's other activity in the days before that, kind of blasting off on all sides. And so we have a whole wave that we're about to go through. And then after this conjunction of Venus with Jupiter, Jupiter will continue moving ahead. It'll move into the constellation of Cancer, and Venus eventually will sweep by and conjunct Regulus in the constellation of Leo. So we have this interesting progression towards the sun as the sun is also waking up with more sunspots. So it hasn't yet woken up with solar activity, but I do think we have some pretty significant flares coming within the next 2 weeks. So here we can see our Earth facing sunspots right here. And you'll notice one in particular, 4447 there, growing quite rapidly, but it's not yet a huge sunspot or anything to worry about. This sunspot group right here, 4446, was a monster on the far side just about 8-9 days ago, right when we had this Mercury-Cazimi, and it was the superior conjunction of Mercury, so Mercury-Sun-Earth alignment, Mercury being the closest planet to the sun, also has a magnetic field, right? Right when the sun moved through that alignment, that huge sunspot, mega sunspot formed, one of the biggest of the solar cycle. Now we're seeing the remnants. That does not mean that it's done, it's over, it's finished. It could, but it very well also could continue to now have a new burst of activity and new sunspot growth and flux. We're seeing that right here with 4447. We'll see if that translates over to a second wind for 4446 right there. And if we go back to our far side, this sunspot group will be rotating into view in just about a day or two. This one being quite big, it's been quite active. And you'll notice there's a whole string of them. So we have continuous sunspots that will be rotating through Earth center and direct for the next 2 weeks, basically. Now, if we look at this one right here, you'll notice something interesting. And that is the fact that it has a reverse polarity compared to the normal polarity regime that we see for sunspots with this solar cycle in the northern hemisphere. Because the sun obeys these magnetic polarity rules effectively. And so right now in solar cycle 25, you get positive polarity leading in the northern hemisphere and negative polarity following up behind. What we see is that this is reversed. So we have the negative polarity in front. This is quite rare. You don't get that many sunspots that exhibit negative polarity. And in general, because of this, they are a little bit more explosive than they would be otherwise. About 2 times more likely to explode with a big solar flare. So that sunspot group right now, really not that big or significant, but it does have this unique opposite polarity, and maybe undergoes some new growth and we get some boom shakalaka action coming up once it's on Earth facing. That is certainly possible. Now, if we look at our Schumann resonances here, we see that we had very, very weak Schumann resonances. These are Earth's naturally resonant energy fields oscillating at 7.8 Hertz for the foundational mode, 14 Hertz for mode 2, 20 Hertz for mode 3, 26 Hertz or so for mode 4, 33, 39, 45. They decrease in power as you go up in frequency. Interesting to note, as you may have noticed, those overlap with our brainwave architecture. Our natural brainwave frequencies match up perfectly with Schumann resonances. So with our data here out of Tomsk, Russia, our vertical electric field, we see that they were very, very weak. Then we saw this burst of local weather for the area that put a lot of signal into this local spectrograph, but then the global signal re-emerged, and we saw that our Schumann resonances are now quite a bit stronger than they were just about 2-3 days ago. So perhaps you felt that shift. Our seismic activity right here is pretty moderate. We had, some activity with the coronal hole, and then we had a 6.6 mid-ocean ridge earthquake, and then just recently the magnitude 6 that struck Hawaii. But our last big seismic burst was back here in March and the first day of April, and then we had, of course, our 7.5 Japan there in April on the 20th. So we do have that coronal hole that's been seemingly driving this activity coming back for June, and that'll actually be effective, should it still exist, and almost certainly does, right after this Venus-Jupiter conjunction. Just want to quickly show you some other things before we get to that. Here we see the sunspots on the Earth-facing side. The big ones. There's not too much compactness or clustering to them. That was, when they were back on the far side. Now they've split apart, but this is still a big sunspot core. And what we've seen many times is that sometimes these big sunspot cores, just a single polarity, will be totally quiet and calm, and then it'll just explode off an X flare or a high M class flare. So that's certainly possible any moment in time now. We see our sunspot group 4447 there actively growing. This core has grown quite a bit larger. We're seeing new solar flux push out and expand outwards this way. These have the same polarity, and then this right there is the positive polarity. So negative polarity leads in the southern hemisphere. So you can see that there's just quite a few big cores spread out, but not that much activity at this moment in time, which we can see if we go to our X-ray flux right here, past 7 days. We did have this minor M-class flare right there on the 22nd, but since then we've only been having C-class to B-class activity. But in general, you see that we have been going up. So this is what I'm talking about. When there's sunspots on the sun, you do get increased EUV, which is extreme ultraviolet, and X-ray flux, and that charges up the ionosphere and gets the global electric circuit going. So then you start to add some flares on top of that, and now you're really cooking in terms of maybe bigger geophysical events, earthquakes, things of this nature. Volcanic activity, we've been having pretty incredible volcanic activity this year with the big Ridge volcano eruption in Papua New Guinea. That's still going on. But you see that we've gone from moderate B class now to confidently hovering in this low C class zone right there. And that's only going to continue as more sunspots rotate into view. Now let me show you what's happening with our sky before we sign off. This is just a general update for you all. And this is later tonight. We see Venus right here. Here's Jupiter, and here we have the constellation of Gemini, the twins. We have Pollux and Castor. They're very, very bright. It's going to be hard to miss them unless you have extreme light pollution, maybe like New York City or Tokyo or something like that. Here is the Crab. This is constellation of Cancer, and here is the constellation of Leo with Regulus. So that's the next big bright star along the ecliptic plane that the planets will zoom past. And if we simply go forward here and check this out, we will see that Venus, and let me move this up a little better for you guys. We'll see that Venus will then conjunct Jupiter right here on the 8th to 9th of June. So that's a very, very benefic conjunction. These are the two known benefics, the good guys, you could say. And knowing this ahead of time, if there's something that you were wanting to kind of manifest, work on, just bring into existence, or you just want the good times to roll, now is the time to really be kind of focusing on and building these energies. Because if you just wait till the last day on the conjunction, it's better than not doing anything. But really, this is already in effect because you see that they're in the same constellation. And even right now, it's almost like Jupiter is taking on the role of Pollux and Venus is taking on the role of Castor there. So there's going to be this conjunction on the 9th. That's creating a really nice wave going forward into early June. And then Venus will charge through. We see this new moon right here as well. Well, the new moon is a little bit ahead of this. This is now a waxing crescent moon right there. But the moon will charge past Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter will move into Cancer. But at this point, we won't really be seeing Jupiter in the sky because it'll be so close to the sun. And then Venus will continue on and conjunct Regulus. And this will be on the 9th of July. So we have this nice progression of energy where Venus will be a very bright evening star for quite some time. And Mercury will be moving ahead too because we see Mercury just had a superior conjunction. So Mercury is also moving ahead here. We see Mercury right there slowly going. So we have this whole lineup coming up. It's already starting now, but it'll really click into phase with the 9th of June. And then we're in a whole new era, baby. We have this big coronal hole that'll be rotating back shortly after that Venus-Jupiter conjunction. So I'm expecting there to be heightened seismic activity after all these sunspots have kind of done their Earth-facing rotation around the early to middle part of June. So we're talking like June 10th to the 15th. That's when we can expect that coronal hole. The Earth will be well charged up with its global electric circuit, and then we're going to be having these planetary alignments at that time. So that's the next critical time window that I'm looking at. Of course, we could have things that happen before that, up to that, but that's really a zone that you can look at, forecast, and we'll see what happens. So that is your update for today. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Thank you all so much. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Enjoy your longer weekend. If you're in the United States, happy Memorial Day. And to everyone else around the world, thank you all so much. Sending you lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.